Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, I think other speakers have said everything. So I just want to say a few words in support of your efforts for truth and justice and to prevent further massacre of innocent people, to end this impunity. So today I want to commend your courage and also condemn the massacre by the Iranian regime when Khomeini himself was still alive. And they tried to hidden it for many years. He was not alone when he committed that crime. The media, the international media, were also silent. Because there's an expression says that the truth is at the end of a well, but one day it will come out of that well. Very briefly, what happened before this massacre? Khomeini was in Najaf in exile since 1963. In 1979, in the month of September, in fact, in the month of September 1978, he was expelled from Iraq and resided in France. And his theory, which was really taken from the Muslim Brotherhood to establish Islamic emperor, he was with a very dogmatic interpretation of Islam. In February 1979, Khomeini returned to Iran after he set up a council of revolution, and Mehdi Bazargan was appointed as the prime minister of the provisional government. But Bazargan, who was a colleague of Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh, in November 1979, he resigned because he could not tolerate the extremism by the Khomeini's group and lot. After the American diplomats were taken hostages by Khomeini's people, that happened in the 4th of November 1979. On the 1st of April 1979, Islamic Republic was established, but the project for this regime led to disunity among those who wanted to see an end to the Shah's regime. The extremists wanted to establish a theocratic regime, a tyrant regime, a religious regime, and not a democratic one, with a dogmatic interpretation of Islam. So the clergy started to suppress the Iranian intellectuals. And the freedoms which has been gained as a result of the revolution was destroyed. In 1980, the Iraqi President Saddam Hussein decided to confront the Khomeini regime. Khomeini considered Saddam Hussein's government or regime as being infidel, and he has declared his view to overthrow the regime in Iraq and counted on the support from the Iraqi Shiite. The takeover of the American embassy and the war with Iraq led to radicalization of the situation in Iran, and the clergy who followed Khomeini really grabbed all the position of power and even dismissed the then president of the Iranian regime. And in June 1981, a dictatorship, bloody suppression started by the Mullahs regime. Therefore, those who overthrew the Shah set up resistance against the radicalization of the regime by the extremists, by the clergy under the leadership of the absolute leadership of the Mullahs regime, and the judiciary is completely controlled by the Mullahs regime, by the clergy, and they have every power to decide about the fate of the people. The absolute rule, therefore, Mullahs' so-called religious law was implemented, freedom, individual freedom was suppressed, and people's private life even were suppressed. So they implemented a new life on the Iranian people, and finally there was the ceasefire in 1988, which is said to that over 1 million were killed. In the summer of '88, the Iranian regime arbitrarily executed 30,000 political prisoners. Such killings this killing started in July and ended by end of autumn. There were three kinds of victims. Some were still going through their sentence. Some had already finished their sentence but still remained in prison. And the third, who had been released but then again arrested to be executed. We should remember that the majority of those were the activists of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran. And as all the testimony clearly showed, that Khomeini set up a so-called amnesty commission, which was really a death commission made up of 3 persons, a representative from the Ministry of Intelligence, a judge, and a prosecutor. But the final decision was really with the representative of the MOIS. So this was the death commission. And this so-called kangaroo court was decided in a matter of a few minutes, and the victims were sent to executions. They were asked, do you remain loyal to the PMOI-MEK? And if they were not prepared to cooperate with the regime and renounce the PMOI, That was an example of being with the PMY, and then they would be condemned to executions. The objective of the commission was whether the prisoner is an enemy of the God, because opposing Khomeini in their interpretation is equal to being opposed to the God. Hundreds of corpses were immediately buried, and thousands in mass graves, and today still their families have no grave to go and remember. This was happening in everywhere. Some of Khomeini's close aides protested to this brutal killing, like Montazeri, who also wrote a letter to Khomeini. Montazeri was Khomeini's designated successor for 10 years, and Madam Rajavi, you informed us that how in this book how all the letters of Montazeri has been published, recorded, and all the testimonies of the families are there. This is a valuable book that needs to be also published, translated into French, particularly, and also in other languages in the Middle East. Montazeri called for the halt on the executions, but Khomeini has said that you should have no mercy for the prisoners, even those underaged, and pregnant women should not be spared. And after his biography and the revelation of some shocking aspects of this massacre, and despite the censorship of the Mullahs regime, more information was revealed about this brutality. And Khomeini, who was at the time the president of the regime, turned to the position of the supreme leader of the regime. And Rafsanjani was the speaker of the parliament at the time. And Hassan Rouhani, who called himself a moderate today, was at the time the deputy commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and also the president of the Supreme Council of War. So in his position, he was fully informed and aware of the massacre. So his silence shows that he was also part of an accomplice to this massacre. Amnesty International woke up and issued a report and wrote that these people should not have impunity in such a way, regardless of when they had happened. Those perpetrators have committed the most heinous violation of human rights and must be brought to court, an independent court, and to have all the rights based on fair international court. But justice has not yet been implemented. and massacre has the perpetrators remain unpunished. Madam Rajavi, your courage and your efforts, you have been able to break this 30 years of silence, and today the regime's officials who were accomplices to this crime, a crime against children, pregnant women, defenseless people, now you're calling for justice and for bringing them to justice with an international inquiry. Roman Roland, who won the reward for literature, said the world is fed by just a portion of truth and a lot of lies and misinformation. I thank you, Mrs. Madam Rajavi, for fighting against the lies and disinformation and supporting the truth.